1. This happened many moons ago in the storied days of yesteryear, the 90s. I was an average 16-year-old attending an average high school. There were no sparkly vampires or anything. I was working at the House of Clown at the time. It was during the summer break, and I was just making myself some money to get by. Oh, how innocent I was in those halcyon days. It was late in the afternoon, typically a slow period. I was minding my business restocking the sauces for the nugs, when I hear one of the other cashiers behind me exclaim, "Shit!" I looked up just in time to see him. Now, Hollywood taught me that when the devil arrived, he would either be Al Pacino in a slick suit or a beefy yellow fellow with horns, cloven hooves, and looked a lot like Ned Flanders. Unfortunately, if Hollywood had been more truthful, it might have been better prepared for who I was about to face. I was not prepared. Walking through the door was a man. He was in his late 50s or early 60s, with greasy, shoulder-length salt and pepper hair, crammed under a baseball cap with a screaming eagle in bright red lettering that said, "Freedom." He had a mustache, and enough stubble to make one think he had personally been boycotting Gillette since 1968. He was wearing a well-worn tactical-style vest covered with various patriotic and military buttons, over a t-shirt with a snake that proclaimed, "Don't tread on me," a pair of camel pants, army boots, and a set of dog tags around his neck. To finish his dashing ensemble, he was wearing mirrored sunglasses which he never removed during the entirety of his stay. He looked around the mostly empty store, as if he was surveying his kingdom. While I was watching his grand entrance, one of my co-workers grabbed my arm and yanked me back around the corner where the friar was located, and she hissed at me, "That's the captain." "Who?" I asked as I tried to look around to see him. She yanked me back. "He's a real asshole." To say he had a reputation would be an understatement. It turned out that this guy's name should have been Dick. All the cashiers and some of the managers were scared to death of him. He was aggressive, hostile, had a nasty tongue, and was extremely picky with his orders. The cashiers usually took turns because no one wanted to deal with him. Having dealt with a number of Karens before, I wasn't particularly worried, and I told my coworker. She told me good luck, and it was then that I noticed that the entire store had gathered around to watch the interaction. Needless to say, this made me more than a little nervous, but still, with all of my youthful ignorance and still believing that people were mostly good and well-meaning, I was 16, I was supposed to be stupid. I took my place behind my register and waited for him to approach. Suddenly, his eyes fixed on me, and I swear to God I heard a sound echo in my head, like a knife being drawn from its sheath as he slowly smiled and headed my way. To say that man swaggered would be an understatement. He walked as if he had just rode a horse straight up I-75 to our humble establishment. I gave my finest customer service smile and started to greet him. Somehow this was a mistake as he said, "Shut up, you listen, I talk." I blinked. He rattled off his order as if he was giving orders to a newly minted batch of rookie recruits. "I want a trademark sandwich with none of that other shit on it. I only want mayonnaise." Yes, he pronounced it just like that. "An extra mayonnaise at that. I want a cup of small black coffee and nothing else. I don't want no fries, I don't want no apple pies, just my trademark sandwich and my coffee. You got me, girly?" I blinked again. Girly? Okay. I shook my head a little and proceeded to input the order. Never in the vast array of Karens that I had dealt with up to that point had I ever met with someone who was so immediately and intensely unpleasant. Once I put the order in and turned back to the kitchen to make sure they got the special part of the order, only to find even more staff standing around that one corner staring out at me, and the captain, like a bunch of meerkats who had just heard a lion on the savannah. Normally I would have made pleasant chit-chat while the order was prepared, but the man radiated such hostility that I wanted to be as far away from him as possible. Like the rest of the staff, I hid in the back. As soon as the order was put up, I asked him if he wanted to eat in or take out. He looked annoyed at my even asking, but he tapped on the counter with one single dirty-nailed finger. I took that to mean that he wanted to eat in. I admit my heart fell a little to hear he wouldn't be leaving straight away. I pulled out a tray and put his sandwich on it and poured his coffee. I slid the tray over to him, and he snatched the sandwich off the tray. I watched in worried fascination as he ripped open the wrapper and peered between the buns. Then he clucked his tongue and looked back up to me and said in a low voice, "You deaf, girlie?" "Sir?" I said, feeling completely as if I had stepped into the Twilight Zone.
"I said I wanted extra mayonnaise."
With that, he threw the sandwich at me. I managed to jump backwards, but the sandwich hit the lower part of my trousers and left a big splotch of mayonnaise down my leg. I was absolutely gobsmacked. Every word of the social contract that I thought most people had read and signed was pitched out the window, and I was left floundering.
"Now you get your ass back there and make me the sandwich I done paid for."
Making a note to apologize to my coworker about not believing her when she said he was an asshole, I went back to the back and asked them to remake the sandwich with more mayo. They remade the sandwich, and I took it back out to him, and I put it on his tray. Again, he snatched it up and peered between the buns. What he saw must have made him happy, because he put the sandwich back on the tray and swaggered off back to the dining room. I took the opportunity to almost melt into the ground with relief. While he ate, the store was dead quiet. I hadn't ever heard it so quiet. It was as if his presence just killed all the joy and need to communicate with our fellow humans. When we did talk, it was in whispers. While I hoped that was the end of my trial, it was just the first act. I had been lurking in the back, peeking out occasionally to make sure there were no other customers. Unfortunately, the captain was back up at the register. Me and the other cashier bickered back and forth between ourselves about who was going to deal with him, and we flipped a coin. Luck was not with me. It was time for Act 2. Like a convict walking the last mile to the chair, I walked back out. I didn't ask him what he wanted because I was sure he was going to tell me, and he did.
"I want an ice cream cone. I don't want no sundae. I don't want no toppings, just an ice cream cone. You think you can do that right?"
I bit back the nasty comment burning on my tongue and went and got the aforementioned ice cream, not a sundae, and with no toppings. I brought it back out and handed it to him. Without a word, he took it, and immediately launched it right back at me. I hadn't even had the chance to fully lean back from the exchange, and thus it hit me squarely in the center of my forehead. I swear to God, that son of an off-brand farm animal smiled. At this I was stunned, shocked, horrified, and mortified. For a split second, I was torn between jumping the counter and kicking him in his smug puss, and bursting into tears. Unfortunately, being a teenage girl, my emotions chose the latter instead of the former. Now the evening manager, Greg, had just come in, and he heard the commotion, and come up to the front of the store when he heard me scream to see what was going on. Now the evening manager, bless him, was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He was a former sergeant in the Marines and stood 6'6" if he was an inch, and could have dressed his massive bodybuilder-like shoulders up his linebackers, and no one would have been the wiser. Needless to say, he was not remotely intimidated by a sad old man who enjoyed pretend power by terrorizing teenage fast food workers. Greg marched up to me and asked me what happened, and while I was trying to explain, the captain went on an expletive-laden rant, yelling about how stupid and incompetent I was, yelling about how I couldn't even make a simple ice cream cone, informing anyone and everyone who cared to listen that I was lower than the dirt beneath his feet. The manager asked me in a disbelieving tone if he had thrown the ice cream cone at me. The captain yelled, "I sure as shit did, and maybe that'll teach that stupid little bitch to do it right next time." My manager walked around the edge of the counter and stepped right in the captain's personal space and got nose to nose with him. Careful to not actually touch him, and said,
"Listen here, sir."
For the first time, the captain seemed to be at least a little cowed. He took half a step back, and my manager followed, closing the space between them again.
"You're going to apologize to my employee, and then you're going to walk out that door, and you're not going to come back here. If you don't, then we're going to have a problem. Are we going to have a problem, sir?" "I ain't apologizing to nobody, at least of all that little—"
And then he used a word that, rather surprisingly, suggested he was into philosophy.
Maybe I misheard.
The captain spit and jammed a finger in my direction.
"If you don't leave, then I'm going to have to call the police and have them arrest you for assault and trespassing."
I could tell that Greg desperately wanted the captain to do something that would give him an excuse to lay him out. Then the most wonderful thing in the world happened. The captain laid his hands on my manager and punched him. Greg didn't so much as flinch. Instead, he actually smiled and said, Thank you for that. Then, quick as a shot, Greg grabbed the captain's arm and twisted it behind his back, and brought him to the ground and held him down, while telling our day manager, who stood by staring like a cow, viewing an oncoming train, to call the police. The good news, I got to go home early that day. The better news, the captain was blacklisted from our store. The best news, the police came and carted him off yelling, kicking, screaming, and resisting. The police asked me if I wanted to press charges, and honestly, I just wanted to go home. In retrospect, I really wish I had. But hey, I'm sure the captain kicking the cop in the bahoogies or resisting arrest probably got him far more trouble than pitching an ice cream cone at me ever would. Well, I don't know what happened to the captain after that. I do know I never had to see him again, and that was good enough for me. After that, I found a better job, serving ice cream of all things, oh the irony, and moved on, but I would always remember the former Marine with the gentle ways and the kind smile, who went so far as to stand up for his employee. Hellfreezer's note, screw the rest of the staff in that place for sending a child out to deal with something that, quite frankly, they should have had the responsibility to shut down long before they ever started working there. Alright, end of rant. 2. I'm so mentally and emotionally drained from this whole situation. So, some important thing to know before I get into it. I'm a 24-year-old trans guy who is homosexual and aromantic, and even though I don't flaunt my sexuality, I don't exactly hide it either. I've made a couple of posts on Facebook stating this, so I don't know how she didn't know. She herself is a 23-year-old woman, and I've known her for almost 2 years. Anyways, this takes place the day after Valentine's Day, and I'm just getting off work, 3:30ish, when Tiffany asks me if I wanted to get dinner with her at a specific steakhouse that I really like. So I joined her at the restaurant, thinking we were just hanging out, because I had no reason to believe that a lady I was friends with for 2 years would want to date an obviously gay man. I ordered chicken strips, tenders, and water, and she ordered a lot of food, like, a lot. During the whole meal, she tried to share her food with me, and I kept resisting because I just wanted chicken strips. We discussed a few topics and some weird ones. Some weird ones were asking about my relationships and experiences with others. I vaguely mentioned that I haven't dated in a few years and usually just end up getting my needs met with strangers. I keep it vague as we were in a restaurant, and even though I'm open about my experiences with friends, I don't think that sharing explicit details in a public setting is appropriate. I also felt kinda uncomfortable as she tried to pry me for details, but I just told her that I didn't feel this was a good place to talk about stuff like that. She eventually dropped it. Once we finished, I went to pull out my card to pay for my meal, and she stopped me saying she'd pay for it, and I asked if she was sure, and she insisted I let her because my meal was really cheap. The bill total ended up being almost $100. Like I said, she got a lot of food. I thanked her for the meal, and I Ubered home. At 2 a.m. on the 16th, 2 hours before I had to get up for work, I was woken up by a lot of Facebook messages from Tiffany calling me all sorts of names and other crazy messages from her. I responded half-dead with, "What?" And as soon as I sent a few messages asking what she was talking about, she called me on Facebook Messenger and I answered, still half asleep. And she immediately started screaming at me saying, "I paid for your meal, I can't believe you. You led me on. I spent a lot of money on that meal, the least you could do was hook up with me." And some other crazy screaming that I wasn't able to understand, because screaming at a half-asleep person through a phone doesn't come out as clear as you'd think. I ended up hanging up because I needed sleep, and maybe she was drunk or had messaged me by mistake, so I fell back asleep. Guys, honestly, I thought that I'd never see a grown woman go so batshit crazy. When I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, I was gifted the wonderful wall of notifications of 87 Facebook messages and 17 missed Facebook calls. Thank goodness this girl didn't have my actual number. While I was getting ready and waiting to clock in at 6:30 a.m., I read them all, and the amount of horrible and disgusting things this girl has sent was just baffling. She called me everything from homophobic slurs, sexist comments, calling me a dirty fucking half-breed who should have died in the fucking womb along with your mom. I'm of Mexican and Spanish descent, so I think she was referring to that. And some other extremely disgusting shit. She also demanded I pay her $100 for her trouble. After reading all that, I clocked in for my 8-hour shift, immediately regretting reading all that before, and after getting off, I go home to more horrible messages. I sit down in a Discord call with friends, and I end up dumping the whole thing on them, because I was stressed out and extremely cranky. And during that call, I'm thinking on how to go about this when a wonderful idea pops into my head. I should send some screenshots of these to her parents. So I pick through all the messages, making sure to get the best ones to send, and send them to her mom and dad. A little bit about her parents. Her parents are the sweetest and kindest people I've met. The mom is this sweet southern Christian woman, who's the type to bake cookies for the new neighbors, and is the love thy neighbor no matter what type. She knew I was gay and trans, but her daughter didn't until later. And her dad is the upfront and clear and take no shit kind of person. The way he talks is kinda annoying, but I like it, because he tells you exactly what he thinks. Anyways, her mom messages me a bit later saying, "I'm so sorry about this. I had no idea. I can't believe she would say or do something like this. This isn't how we raised her. I hope you don't think we think the same about you." After about 10-ish minutes or so, Tiffany messages me saying, "Did you just message my mom?" And I didn't answer. Some time passes and her dad messages me apologizing for his daughter's words and acts, and then goes on to say that they've kicked her out of their house, taken away permission to drive their car, refused to pay any more of her college expenses, and her brothers have cut contact with her. One of which is married to a Mexican woman, so you can imagine how he took the half-breed comment she made. After that, it was silence, no messages, no calls, no nothing. Until today, I get on and went to look at Facebook, and noticed her Facebook is gone. She completely deleted it, so it's over. I'm not afraid of her finding me, because she doesn't know where I live or work, or know any of my contact info other than Facebook. The whole situation has been unnecessarily stressful and just, ugh. I did ask her parents if they were okay with me posting this, and they were okay with it. 3. I have an entitled aunt. She has an entitled husband, and 3 kids of whom 2 are entitled. This story is about the younger entitled cousin. So during one crazy part of my then 22-year-old female life, I had lots of pets. A few goats, a flock of chickens, bunnies, and 2 cats. I was in a friend group in which we rented a cabin together every once in a while for a weekend to sit outside by a bonfire and glutton our weekend away. This meant I had to find a pet sitter. Twice I made the mistake to ask for help from my entitled aunt and her family. Mostly as my mother suggested it. They lived quite near, and entitled aunt said her daughter would love to help, so I invited my entitled cousin to see what I wanted her to do. She had no problem feeding animals outside. It was busy enough, I had my doubts. She was younger than I'd like my pet sitters to be. Don't remember it too clear, but she was between 12 and 15. The reason for this story happened inside, as I had shown her where to find cat food and how much to give. I don't remember why I showed her around the house, but I did make that mistake. Room after room, she was bored till we got to my bedroom, and before I knew, she started to pull open my wardrobe and drawers, snipping through my clothes and even underwear, asking if she could have this or this. I was dumbfounded and was able to just tell her no, she can't have my underwear, nor any other clothes. Still trying to be nice, she was a tween or teen after all. Being raised to never snoop, I didn't know how to handle this. Then she found it, in a box inside my drawer, pushed far behind.
"I want this. Can I eat it?"
She was holding a candy cock ring I'd forgotten I had. There were many similar things in that box. I felt my face turn bright red and hoped to disappear into thin air. "That's not for you, and it's not mine to give. You know what? Let's go see the chicken again. I forgot to show you how to hold them if something happened." She wasn't too happy to stop going through my things, but I got her out. I hid the box after getting her to go home, locked my important things away, and was sure to take all alcohol with me for the weekend. I had no time to find another sitter, and had paid my share of the cabin and food. Nor did I want her to take my aunt with her. I don't think she would steal, but going through my stuff and eating something, hard no. I told my mom I would never want my cousin inside my house again. Didn't mention the ring. I can't think of any other reason for not getting into trouble than my cousin thought it was a candy bracelet. My animals were alright when I got home. Not hard to feed them. I'm now 34 years old, and this cousin of mine is a happily spoiled adult right now. I am in no contact with her whole family. 4. So I went to Walmart today because I had to return some curtains that I didn't like. I got inside and went to the customer service area. There were 3 people in line, including me, so no big deal, I thought. There was this elderly couple in front of me that had a lovely bouquet of flowers with them, and it was wrapped in heart wrapping. That's so adorable, I thought to myself. The guy at the front of the line got done with his business, and next up was this, what I believe to be, sweet couple. I don't really pay much attention, as I'm looking around trying to blend in due to social anxiety and whatnot, but I still overheard the discussion between the elderly man, Ken, and the poor cashier.
I bought these flowers on Valentine's Day and want to return them.
Okay, sir, do you have the receipt?
No, I seem to have misplaced it, but I know I bought them from here.
Okay, sir, because you don't have a receipt, we can only give you $5. This is when I noticed Ken getting frustrated.
But I paid $11 for these. I want a full refund.
At this, the wife begins getting uncomfortable and tells him to
just forget about it and accept the $5.
Holding his arm. Ken then yanks his arm from the grasp of his wife and aggressively tells her to
do not touch me again.
To which his wife looks down at the floor and doesn't say anything. He then turns to the cashier, who has now called over a fellow female employee that is also a manager. The cashier tells the manager the story about how he wants to return the refund and blah blah blah. The manager then asks Ken, "Do you pay with cash or card?"
I paid cash, but I want a full refund.
I'm sorry, sir, but all this Valentine's Day stuff has been marked down, so since you don't have a receipt and paid cash, we can only give you $5.
But I paid $11.
I'm sorry, sir. Now the wife intervenes and tells the cashier that they'll accept the $5. This set Ken off.
I'm not trying to screw you out of $5. This company makes trillions a year, and I want my $5.
What he said next was kind of fuzzy because I was too far away, but I heard him say something about coming back with a weapon and getting what he deserves. To which the poor cashier exclaims, "That's just ignorant." Now the wife is telling Ken to stop talking, and the manager quickly gives out a $5 bill to the wife. As the wife is apologizing, Ken walks away, and then back to the counter next to his wife.
I should slap both of you. I could put you both on the ground in a second.
Ken raised his arm up like he was going to strike one of them. They both stepped back away from the counter. This is while I got my phone out and started to record just in case anything happened. Right as I did this, his wife quietly tells him to shut up and let's go. She pulls him away from the counter and they walk off. I put my phone down and stand there taking in what I had just witnessed, while giving the cashier and manager a moment to collect themselves. When I got to the counter, I put my curtains down and got my receipt. Shaken, the cashier apologizes to me about what just happened, and I tell her, "Don't worry about it, it's not your fault. I've been in your shoes and stuff like that can happen. It's best to just smile and keep your head up." I return my curtains and leave while some mother barks at her child that won't stand still next to her. Like, no duh, it's a child, and check your tone. But I had enough and just walked away. Who knew returning curtains would lead to such a turn of events? 5. How do I start this one? When this happened, I was a parent of 2 young children at the elementary grade level. My youngest at that point had to have a bus come right to our doorstep due to his autism. So every morning a group of kids flocked to my driveway, which was large for 5 or so cars, so they had space to play before the bus arrives. The parents got to know me and felt safe leaving their children under my watch. Also, I'm male. This is very important to keep in mind. Without this info, you would not know the depth that this event has affected me mentally. One day, an officer drove up into my parking lot while I was washing dishes. I saw them through the window, so I decided to step out to see if they needed something from me. The officer stepped out of the car and addressed me as such.
Railuge doucheface?
I looked at him confused. No, I'm Railuge Dark Knight.
Obviously not my real name,
but we shared the same first name and the last name started the same. The officer looked at me suspiciously and said,
"Can we see your ID?"
"Certainly." I replied and retrieved my ID. I handed it to the cop, And he looked at my picture, looked at me, studied the picture, studied my face, handed me back my ID and said, "I'm sorry, sir, we got reports of Dishface living here, and he used to live 100 yards away from a school building." I cannot remember the number, but living in my hometown, you cannot find any house that isn't within spitting distance of any kind of school. The officers got back into the car and drove off. Concerned, I googled Railuge Dishface. If you googled that just like I did, I hope you have good antivirus programs. Anyways, the guy that popped up did indeed live near me. Turns out he was just released after committing a certain act toward a child he abducted from a school. Seriously. They set this guy free in a town known for its public schools. Furthermore, I found a picture taken of him when he was in court. Not only did he steal my first name, but he also had long dark hair, my signature mustache, and goatee. Same kind of glasses. And he was round and chubby like me. It's not he vaguely looks like me, but handsomer and in shape. No, he just looks like me. I felt like I was looking into an alternate universe. None of this is the worst part, however. In the picture, he was leisurely leaning back with a goddamn confident smirk across his dumb douche face. I never wished I could punch someone through the screen so bad as that day. There aren't enough insults in the history of time to express how pissed off I was about this guy. Later, some months down the road, the kids were picked up from school, and I was sitting on my porch getting some fresh air. I heard a couple walking down the street talking. Suddenly, I heard a guy saying, "A pedophile lives there." I knew what he was talking about. Soon enough, the couple walks in line sight of me, then suddenly stops talking. I watch them walk past my house when the guy leans over to the girl's ear. She turned around with rage on her face and stared back at me. She took 2 steps when the guy holds her back. He said something and they walked away. Guys, this messed with my mental health. I've been blamed for things I have not done, however, this is the biggest thing that has been wrongly said about me. Nothing much more came of this, but I bet that my neighbors thought the same thing as the couple there. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 51. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, comment, subscribe. I tricked you. It's not how I usually say it. But yeah, do those things. I like it when you do that. Makes me happy. What else? Oh yes, if you have a story to send in, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. Alright, where are we? This is Sunday, isn't it? Yes, it is. I was going to do a neckbeard video today, but I think we'll give it a rest and we'll try for one next Sunday. Or maybe it'll happen sooner. It depends on what stories I have to do tomorrow. Maybe revenge. Not sure. Haven't checked yet. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up here quickly because I have to make this video because it's 3:30 in the afternoon and I want it up by 5. And I've got a grocery order coming because food good. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and take very good care of yourself.